Hi everyone, welcome back to More English with Dry. Today I'm going to take you through Stave 3, specifically the section where the ghost of Christmas present shows Ebenezer Scrooge the figures of ignorance and want personified by two small children, as a way of illustrating what the biggest issues facing Victorian society were. The beginning of the extract we're looking at today starts with the ghost of Christmas present referring to Scrooge as man with a capital M. Now, what he's doing here is he is expressing the fact that all of the messages he is giving to Scrooge are actually relevant to society as a whole, specifically middle to upper middle class Victorian society, because they were the ones that financially had the means to change things and make things better for people. But by calling Scrooge man, he is showing that this is not just a message for this one person, this is not just a tale about a man named Ebenezer, this is something that is for everyone who is reading to take note of. He's directly addressing the audience, if you like, of Victorian London. Now, as I said, he personifies the two biggest issues as he sees them, ignorance and want. They are made into two small, impoverished, close to death children. And the description that is given to them initially is very telling and highlights specifically what the issues that he is talking about are. He first says that they are yellow. Now, yellow is a colour that features very frequently throughout all of Charles Dickens' writing. It's usually designed to illustrate a lack of purity, or perhaps rather that purity has disappeared. Obviously, yellow, when thought of in relation to flowers or the sun or nature, is a positive one. Dickens always uses yellow as something that shows that vibrance and youth and purity have disappeared and been left to decay. It usually shows neglect, which is exactly what has caused these two children to be yellow. Also perhaps illness, if you think about it that way. He says they're meagre and ragged. Now the idea of ragged links to rags and suggests perhaps that they are, in terms of their appearance, they are impoverished, that their clothes are torn or something like that. Or just ragged in general, the idea that life is taking a lot out of them and being hard on them. Finally, he says they're scowling and wolfish. Now, this shows these are quite negative character traits. However, it's not a judgment on the two children. It shows that the hardships that they have faced in life have made them hard, have made them mean. It's warped and twisted them into being almost animal-like in the word wolfish, showing that perhaps this is what the poverty that is inflicted upon them makes them into. So less of a judgment on them and more of a judgment on the people that facilitate this, on create this situation, the people who have stolen their innocence and stolen their, kindness that is naturally something that comes with youth. They are abandoned by the world around them, and this is precisely why they appear to be almost desperate, so desperate that they have taken on a wolfish and a scowling demeanour. This is a very clear judgment on Scrooge because he is the one who has facilitated this extent to which that they are scowling and wolfish. Now there's a further piece of imagery that Dickens uses in which he talks about how age has made them prematurely look old. Now he uses another metaphor to do this. He talks about the hand of age. He imagines the effect of poverty and neglect on them as being something that makes them look like they are elderly even though they are children. Now again, this hints that their innocence has been taken from them. It has been in the same way that that happens to everyone as they get older. However, these children have not gotten older, only kind of spiritually. And this hand that is doing this, age, is being personified into a hand. It's shriveled, which again kind of indicates the idea of the death of purity, the death of nature. Shriveling is something that happens when things are close to death and they're not looked after. We think about plants when they are not watered or given enough sunlight, then they shrivel. Well, this is precisely what's happening to the children. The triplet of verbs as well that is used indicate the kind of painful process of what has happened here. Almost the fact that they are pinched and twisted, and it shows that this has not been something that has just happened naturally. It is something that has been deeply upsetting to them, deeply affecting. It's almost like it's been stolen from them. And this creates a sense of the horror of what has happened, and it's far greater than than any other monsters that our society can show, and that is what the Ghost of Christmas Present says. He goes on to say that where angels may have been, instead it is devils or demons. Now this obviously is a clear link to the religious undertones of this novel, of the message that is being given. And it shows precisely the innocence that we're talking of. You know, the idea of the sort of cherub, the cherubic angel is associated with youth in a lot of ways. And again, innocence, the perfection in the eyes of God. Children are without sin, or largely, but they've been made demonic and devilish. And this shows that these children are sort of society in microcosm, that while God intended us to live in a certain way, intended society to be a certain thing, the Victorians were creating a society that was far away from God with how devilish it was. We hear then the description of humanity as becoming perverted. Now this word is a really interesting one to use here, because perversion essentially means when something is twisted away from what it is naturally supposed to be. You know, it doesn't refer to anything, it's certainly not got the connotations it does nowadays. It just means when something is changed or altered unnaturally. And his message clearly shows that through our ignorance of Christian doctrine, we, or rather the Victorians, have created this bastardized and changed version of life, of how people are supposed to be. And it implies very much the causal nature that we have done this. This is not an accident in any way. This is something that has been created by mankind's greed, by our selfishness, and by our inability to face the issues in front of us. Now, as ever, Scrooge sort of tries to defend or deflect. His first instinct is to deny the problem and sort of gloss over the hideousness of them. He refers to them as fine children, which of course they are not. We've just had a long paragraph being told how they are repulsive to look at. But in doing so, it's kind of ironic because he confirms the problem of ignorance. These two problems, ignorance and want, are literally the deficiency or not having enough, and then the people ignoring the problems facing society. And that is exactly what Scrooge is doing. He is showing that he is not willing to confront the issues, and therefore he can pretend they're not happening. The Spirit confirms, though, what we already have ascertained as readers. He confirms they belong to mankind, which proves the idea that we, or more specifically the Victorians and the middle and upper classes, or really just those who are in a financial or political position to change things, have created this situation. You know, they are man's, they belong to us. God has not done this. You know, it's our, as a society's deviation from the teachings of Christ, specifically in this novel, that have created this situation. Now, the capitalization of ignorance and want shows the extent to which that these are considered to be the issues. Wanting for something does not mean when you desire it. It means you need it, and it is not there. It means a lack. It means when there is not enough of something. And this is precisely what we are seeing in this novel. When we take the Cratchits as our example, they do not have enough to get by. Tiny Tim will die if he is not properly looked after. And then the ignorance of this, those of you that have studied in Inspector Calls will of course be aware of the word ignorance, because it's something that's, ascribed to Arthur Burling a lot of the time. This is exactly the same situation. It is deliberately not being aware of what is going on. Ignorance isn't simply not knowing. Ignorance is being deliberately unaware of what is going on. And that is entirely the issue that we see in this. Now, in the final line, Scrooge asks the immortal question if they know refuge or resources, and the Ghost of Christmas Present repeats back to him his own words one more time. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? This is sort of to compound Scrooge's humiliation. It reminds Scrooge of how cold and callous his words now seem in the cold light of day. Now that he has been actually confronted with the things that he has been talking about so flippantly, he realizes that he is very much part of this problem. He is to blame fundamentally for what is happening here. And therefore it's quite fitting, because it's sort of Scrooge coming full circle, really, with his comments from the start of this novel. And it was possibly the most ignorant thing he could have said at that point. which fits again with being confronted with literal embodiment of ignorance. I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure you stay tuned for more Christmas Carol content and other things for GCSE English. Goodbye.